Hey guys, in this video we are going to be making an easy v-neck sweater. This sweater can be made in a number 3 lightweight yarn or a number 4 medium weight yarn. You can use the recommended hook size for the yarn you are using, or you can use a bigger hook if you would like your work to be loose, or a smaller hook if you would like your work to be a little more tight. In this tutorial, I am going to be using a number 4 medium weight yarn with a recommended hook size of 5.5 millimeters, but I am going to use a 5 millimeter hook because I would like my work to be a little more tight. To get started with this, you will want to know your shoulder width. I am going to be using a shoulder width of 16 inches, and we are going to start with the front panel. To get started with the front panel, we are going to start with a chain, and you will want to chain however many you need to reach the length that you decided to use for your shoulder width. So again, I am going to be using a shoulder width of 16 inches, and with my gauge, with my yarn and my hook, I am going to chain 63 stitches. You will want this beginning chain to be an odd number of stitches. That way it will be easier to make the V-neck later on the top of our front panel. So again, go on to chain however many you need to reach the length for your shoulder width that you decided to use, and make sure that it is an odd number of stitches. Again, I am going to go on to work 63 stitches. When you have the length for that chain that you would like, again, a length that matches your shoulder width, for me 16 inches or 63 stitches, we will then go on to chain 2 more, and then we are going to double crochet into the 3rd stitch from the hook. So this first double crochet is the first stitch, and this chain 2 here does not count as a stitch. So we will then go on to double crochet into the next stitch and into each stitch all the way across. When you have double crocheted all the way across that row, you should have the same amount of double crochets as you decided to use for your beginning chain. Again, for me, 63 stitches, and that is not including the beginning chain 2. So again, you should have the same amount of double crochets as you decided to use for your beginning chain. For the second row, we are going to turn our work and start with a chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into the same first stitch and double crochet into each stitch all the way across, having your last double crochet be in the last double crochet of the row, not using this beginning chain 2. When you have made it all the way across the second row, you again should have the same amount of stitches as you had for the first row and the beginning chain. For me, that is 63 stitches, and that is not including the beginning chain 2, and that is also ending with your last double crochet in the last double crochet from the previous row. We are now going to go on to repeat row 2 until you have the length for your sweater that you would like, measuring from right below the bottom of your bust or from wherever you would like the V-neck of your sweater to start. I would like the V-neck of my sweater to start, like I said, right at the bottom of my bust. So I am going to go on to repeat row 2 until I have the length for my sweater that I would like, measuring from the bottom of my bust where I would like the V-neck of my sweater to start. I am going to go on to repeat row 2 until I have about 32 rows. And again, you will want to go on to repeat row 2 for as many times as you would like to reach the length for your sweater that you would like, measuring from right where you would like the V-neck of your sweater to start. So again, for the next row and each row until you are ready to start the V-neck for your sweater, we're going to turn our work and start with a chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into the same first stitch and into every stitch all the way across this row, making sure our last double crochet is in the last double crochet from the previous row. And again, we are going to go on to repeat this until you have the length for your sweater that you would like, until you would like to start working the V-neck for your sweater. When you have worked the front panel to be the length you would like it to be before starting the V-neck, we will then go on to start the V-neck. So you will want to know what stitch is the very middle stitch of the count that you have. Again, we should have an odd number of stitches, so you should have a very middle stitch. For me, I have 63 stitches. Therefore, the very middle stitch for me is the 32nd stitch. So to start the V-neck, again, we will want to know the very middle stitch. Again, for me, the 32nd stitch. And we are going to want to go on to work 1 single crochet in every single stitch until you have 2 stitches left before that middle stitch. So we are going to start with a chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet in that same first stitch and into every single stitch until you have 2 stitches left before the very middle stitch of your front panel. Again, the middle stitch of my front panel is the 32nd stitch. Therefore, leaving 2 stitches before that stitch would leave me in the 29th stitch. So I'm going to go on to work 1 double crochet in the first 29 stitches, leaving 2 stitches before that very middle stitch. When you have worked 1 double crochet in each stitch until you have 2 stitches left before the very middle stitch, we will then go on to work 1 double crochet in the back loop only of the next 3 double crochets. So again, work 1 double crochet in the back loop only of the next 3 stitches, and that is the last 2 stitches of the first half and the very middle stitch of the front panel. We are then going to bring the next 2 stitches together in the back loop only. So start a double crochet in the next stitch in the back loop only, leaving the last 2 loops on the hook, and then start a double crochet in the next stitch in the back loop only, leaving the last 2 loops on the hook, and then bring those 2 stitches together. So we just brought 2 double crochets together in the back loop only, and those 2 stitches were the first 2 stitches on the second side of the front panel. For the next row, we are of course going to turn our work, and this is the middle of the V-neck and the middle of the front panel. Therefore, this is the side we are going to want to continue to decrease on. So we are going to start with the chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to bring these first 2 stitches together in 1 2 double crochet together. So start a double crochet in both stitches, leaving the last loop on the hook of both stitches, and then bringing them together. And then we're going to go on to work 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across this row. When you have worked 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across that row, with your last double crochet being in the top of the last double crochet of the previous row, we will then go on to work the next row So turn your work, and we are again on the outside of the front panel. So we are going to start with the chain of 2 and work 1 double crochet in this same first stitch and into every stitch all the way across until you have 2 stitches left before the end of this row where we have been decreasing. When you have worked 1 double crochet all the way across and you are left with 2 stitches left at the end, we are then going to bring these last 2 stitches together in 1, 2 double crochet together. So start a double crochet in both stitches, leaving the last loop on the hook of both stitches, and bring them together. So we now have this nice decreased line going on here. So we are now going to go on to repeat these last 2 rows however many times you would like to bring this V-neck up and out as much as you would like to. I'm going to go on to repeat these 2 rows until I have 10 rows of decreases, including this first row. Again, you can go on to repeat these rows however many times you would like to make this V-neck the look that you would like and bring it out and up the way that you would like it to be. Also making sure that this area here is a good shoulder width for you. So continue working these last 2 rows until you have that look that you are going for and the shoulder width that you need. You can always, of course, decrease more or less on the inside part of your panel if you are needing it to come in faster or not come in as fast. You can choose to decrease more or less depending on the look that you are going for. Okay, so I have now decreased as much as I would like to decrease. Again, I worked 10 rows of decreasing on the inside where the V-neck is, leaving the outside straight. And again, that was 10 rows, which leaves me about 6 inches across the shoulder. So we are now going to go on to work 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across until you have the length for your V-neck that you would like and the length for your front panel that you need. So I have already started the next row here, starting with a chain of 2 and working 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across, and repeating this for however many times you need to get the length for your V-neck that you would like. I am going to go on to work 5 rows with 1 double crochet in each stitch, giving me 15 rows for my V-neck in total. Okay, so I have now worked my front panel and my V-neck for this one side to be the length that I would like it to be, and I actually went on to work 9 rows with 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across. And again, I have now reached the length that I would like for this side of my V-neck. So I am now going to finish this off, as you will want to do when you have reached the length for the first side of your V-neck that you would like. For the second side of our V-neck, we are going to start on the other side of the main part of our front panel, and we are going to start with a loop on our hook, and we are going to slip stitch into the very first stitch on this other side of our front panel. So make sure you are slip stitching into the top of the double crochet and not the chain 2, and again slip stitch right into that stitch. We are then going to start with a chain 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into the same first stitch and double crochet into each stitch across the top of this part of the front panel until you get to where the other half of the V-neck starts. When you have come to where the other half of the V-neck is, we are then going to fold this half of the V-neck down so that we see these 5 stitches that we worked in the back loop only. And we're going to go on to work 1 double crochet in the back loop only of the next 3 stitches, which are the last 2 stitches of the half that we are on now and the very middle stitch of the front panel. So again, 1 double crochet in the back loop only of those 3, which leaves us these 2, where we will again bring these 2 together. So start a double crochet in both of these stitches in the back loop only, leaving the last loop on the hook, and then bring them together. So we will now have this first row on the second half of the V-neck that we started, with these 5 stitches overlapping with these 5 stitches on the first half of the V-neck. So you should have the same thing on both sides with these overlapping. So we are now going to go on to work the rest of this half of the V-neck the exact same way as we worked the first half. So you will want to make sure that you decrease the same way for the same amount of rows for the second half as you did for the first half. And when you are done decreasing, you will want to make sure to work the same amount of rows with 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across, again for the same amount of rows that you did for the first half, and then finish off the second half of your V-neck. When you have worked the second half of your V-neck to be the same as the first half of your V-neck, and you have made sure that it is the same, you will then want to finish off the second half of the V-neck, and that is the end of the front panel. This is what your front panel should look like when you are finished with it. Your V-neck shape may be a little different than mine depending on how you worked it, but they should be generally the same shape. When you have finished off the front panel, you will then want to start the back panel, and you will start that in the exact same way that we started this front panel, chaining the exact same amount of chains. Therefore you will have the same amount of double crochets, and you will want to work solid double crochet rows for the same amount of rows that you have for your front panel. My front panel is 51 rows all together. Therefore, I am going to go on to work my back panel to be 63 stitches across and 51 rows long to match my front panel. Again, you will want to do the same thing, making sure that your back panel is as wide and long as your front panel, with solid double crochet rows all the way along. This is what the back panel should look like. Again, it should be the same width and length as the front panel. When you have both of your panels made, we will then sew them together. So we will start by lining up the edges of the front panel on the shoulder and the back panel along the top, and we will tie the very end stitch on both panels together. When you have tied the very end stitch of the shoulder of the front panel to the very end stitch of the top of the back panel together, we will then go through those 2 stitches again from the front to the back, pulling that all the way through, and then we will hold this tail down as we go, and we will go through the next stitch on the front panel and on the back panel, again from the front to the back, and sew this together. And we will continue doing that all the way along this first side of the front panel until you get to the very end. When you have sewn all the way across this side of the front panel and you are in the last stitch of the front panel, we will then go through these 2 stitches one more time, and then we will finish this off. When you have finished this off, you will want to weave in all of these ends And then you will want to go on to do the exact same thing for the other side of the front panel, starting at the outer edge here and sewing this together all the way along this other side of your front panel. When you have both shoulders sewn together, we will then go on to sew the sides together and leave an armhole. To sew the sides together, we are going to do the same thing. So starting in the very bottom stitch of both panels, we are going to tie those 2 stitches together, and then we are going to go through them one more time and hold down these ends as we go along. And then we are going to go into the next stitch on the front and on the back, from the front to the back, and sew this all the way along. But this is the side, so you will want to make sure that you are lining these rows up as you go and that they are matching all the way up. And then you will want to leave an armhole at the top. I will put some general armhole measurements here on the screen, and you can use those for reference. I am going to leave an armhole of 8 inches, which is about 15 rows for me in my gauge. So again, you will want to continue sewing up the sides of both of the front and back panels, making sure to line the rows up as you go along, and then leave yourself an armhole at the top, whatever size you would like your armhole to be. When you have the shoulders and sides all sewn together and you have your armholes, we will then flip our work right side out, and we are going to work a quick border around the neckline and then go on to work the sleeves for this sweater. To work a border around the neckline, we are going to start with a loop on our hook, and we are going to start on the front of our work where this V is overlapping, and here is the last stitch that we worked a stitch into, and this is the next stitch on the other side of the V-neck. So if you pull this forward just a little bit, you can see the full stitch. So we are going to slip stitch around that next stitch, and again slip stitch right onto that stitch. We are then going to go on to start working single crochets along the side of these double crochets, going up the side of the V-neck of this sweater. So this is the first double crochet here, and we're going to work 2 single crochets into the side of this double crochet. So start with a single crochet in the bottom of it, and then single crochet into the top of this double crochet, and then do this all the way along this side of the V-neck until you get to the top where it meets the back panel. So again, work 2 single crochets into the side of the next double crochet, and do this all the way until you get to the top where it meets the back panel. When you get to the top of the neckline where the front panel meets the back panel and you have 1 stitch left on the front panel, we will then work 1 single crochet in that stitch and then work a single crochet in the first stitch on the back panel. And then you will go on to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across the top of the back panel until you get to the other side where it meets the top of the other side of the front panel, and you'll do the exact same thing, and then continue working 1 single crochet in the side of each stitch all the way down the other side of the V-neck until you get to the very bottom. When you have worked all the way down the other side of that neckline, we are then going to finish this off the same way we started it. So we are going to slip stitch into the next stitch on the main part of the sweater, just like this. Inserting your hook into that stitch and slip stitching. You will then want to finish this off and weave in the ends on the beginning and end of the neckline. For the sleeves of this sweater, we are going to start with a loop on our hook, and with our armhole, we are going to start on the back panel side of the armhole, and we are simply going to slip stitch into the side of one of these stitches on the back panel part of the armhole. We are then going to start with a chain of 2, which does not count as a stitch, and we are going to double crochet into the same stitch, and then we're going to work 1 double crochet in the next few stitches. You can work 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, just a few stitches, and then you will want to bring 2 stitches together. And this is what you are going to do all the way around this round by working a few stitches and then bringing 2 stitches together. It does not necessarily matter the count that you have after this round because it is a solid sleeve, so you do not have to follow a pattern count or anything like that. So it doesn't necessarily matter the amount of stitches that you have at the end of this round, but again, you will want to bring a couple of stitches together every once in a while so that your sleeve is not wrinkly at the top where it connects to the body of your sweater. So again, work a couple of stitches and then bring a few together and do this all the way around the armhole. When you have made it all the way around that first round of the armhole, you will then slip stitch into the top of the first double crochet of the round, and that is the end of the first round of the armhole. And again, you should have 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way around, bringing a few stitches together every once in a while so that your armhole is not wavy where it connects to the body of your sweater. So because this is a solid sleeve, you are really able to work this however you would like from here on out. I have 52 stitches around the armhole right now, and I generally end up with 20 to 25 stitches around my wrist. So I'm going to go on to decrease along the sleeve as I go to go from 52 stitches to about 20 to 25 around the wrist. I will put a couple of general sleeve lengths here on the screen so you can use those for guidance, but you can make your sleeve length as long or as short as you would like, and as loose or as tight as you would like. Some good general places to decrease for the sleeve are right about the elbow, at the elbow or slightly above it, about halfway through the forearm, and then around the wrist. And again, those are just general good places to decrease, but because this again is a solid sleeve, you can decrease wherever you would like as you go along to make it a nice smooth decrease as you go down the sleeve. You will want to make sure that you are keeping track of how you work this first sleeve so that you can work the second sleeve exactly the same. So again, I'm going to go on to work my sleeve down from 52 stitches to about 20 to 25 stitches, and I'm going to make my sleeve about 17 inches long. When you have worked the first sleeve to be the way that you would like it to be, You will then finish it off and then start the second sleeve the exact same way, and then make sure that you work it the same way that you worked the first sleeve. So this is what my sleeve looked like after I worked it. I worked it down from 52 stitches at the top to 25 stitches around the wrist, working 1 double crochet in each stitch on a few rounds, and then decreasing by a few stitches on a round, and repeating that to get the shape that I wanted and the fit that I liked. When you have finished both sleeves, you will then want to finish off your work and weave in all the ends. And that's all there is to it. So I hope that that was helpful and enjoyable for you. If it was, please hit that sub, like, and bell button and leave me a comment to tell me what you think. I hope that you guys go on to create many more amazing things. And until next time, guys, I'll see ya.